So in the functions we have seen like how to write a functions, and I said function with arguments and with return values. If the function is having arguments, it receives the values, and this is a function with required arguments. So required arguments required values. So these arguments required values at the time of calling the function. And if you don't give the values, then it generates a error. Okay. So this function is receive the values. So every required argument required the value. Every required argument required the value. If you don't give the value to the required argument, so Python gives what here? Error. So required arguments, required values. Now if you see this, so required arguments required the values at the time of calling the function. If you don't give the values for the required arguments, so it gives a error. If you don't give the values, it gives a error, right? So just to see here. But I said you can write a function with different types of arguments. Suppose if you see this function here, suppose I write I write one function here. So that is some function one, but I write this function with the required arguments. How many arguments I write here? Two arguments. It means this function required how many inputs here? Two inputs. So I try to print the value of A and B. So whenever I call the function, see, function is having two things. One is writing function and one more is calling function. By just writing the function, function will not be called. Okay, it is having two parts. One is writing function and one more is calling the function. By writing the function, function will not be called. You have to call the function. So suppose if I write a function and if I run this program, is it this function will be executed? No. Because here we just write the function, but it is not called. Because we just write a function, but it is not called. So by writing the function, you have to call it. But you are calling like this. Now this is calling the function or invoking the function. I'm calling the function by sending how many values here? Two values. Because this function is having how many arguments here? Two arguments. So here 100 is received by A and 200 is received by what? B. 100 is received by A and 200 is received by B. Okay. So once you run this, now again, suppose if I don't send any values, what will happen? What will happen? Is it generate error or not? Yes. So function one missing two required positional arguments, that is A and B. So required arguments, required values. Okay, required arguments. You have to remember this. Function with required arguments, required values at the time of calling the function. So function with required arguments. Okay, required values. Required values at the time of calling or invoking function. If the values for the required arguments, if the values for required arguments not provided, not provided, so Python compiler generate what your syntax error. Python compiler generates syntax error. So this required arguments can be given. So the values of required arguments can be given. So the values for required arguments, the values for required arguments can be given with argument names also. Argument names also. Okay, it means, for example, this is a function with, I said a comma b comma c comma d. I can give the values like 10 comma 20 comma 30 comma 40. So here I given the value for a. Okay, now I've given the value for which one? A. I've given the value for B. I've given the value for C. I've given the value for D. But I've given the values in the same order. I've given the values in same order or different order, same order. So once you run this, okay, print A comma B comma C comma, what is that? D. So it is printed how many values here? 4 values, because now I can send these values in any order. I can say function 1. First I can give the C value. The value of C is 1. Then I can give A value. The value of A is a 2. I can give the D value. The value of D is a 3. I can give the C value. The value of C is a 5. I can give the value of B. The value of B is what here? 5. So it means first I've given the value for C. Then I've given the value for A. Then I've given the value for D. Then I've given the value for what? B. But here the order is first A value, B value, C value, and then what? D value. But in this case, is it order is the same or different here? Different. First I've given which value? C value. First I've given the C value and then given which value? A value. Then D value and then what? B value. So the order of sending the values may not be the same. You can give in different order by giving what name here? Argument names. But if you are working with other languages like C or Java, you have to give in the same order. If you are working in C or C++ or Java, I have to give in the same order. First I have to give A value, then B value, then C value, and then what? D value. But here I can send the values in any order by giving what name? Argument name. By giving argument name. Argument name I can give, and by giving that I can send the values in any order. By giving that name I can send the values. Okay, I can send the values in any order. So not in a specific order, any order I can define it. Now that is 10, 20, 30, 40 and 2, 5, 1 and one more value is what here? 3. Now this is how you are trying to define. So in different order, right? So you can write a function with, the next one is function with default arguments, function with the default, okay, function with the default arguments or optional arguments. You can also write a function with the default arguments or optional arguments. So function with the default arguments, Okay, function with the default arguments or optional arguments. Okay, so what you're doing with this? So here, for example, if you take the print function is there. In Python, you have a function called print. Is it print is a function or not? Yes. If you take a print function, how you are writing a print function like this? Print, okay, print, what is the syntax of print? Print will receive values. And what is the default separator space? So it means print function is like this. Definition print, separator is a space. And print function, here you have a star and separator, and there is E and D. What is the value of E and D? Backslash N. Okay, and there is a, what is that file? What is the file is given? Sys dot std out. And one more is given. What is that here? Flash. So there is a flush. And the value of flush is given what here? True. The value of flush is given true. Now this is how the function print is. This is a definition of print function. So here you have some statements. Here you have what here? Statements. Now if you see this print function, now print function is having some arguments, right? Now see if you see these arguments. Okay, these arguments are called which arguments here? Default arguments. These are called as which arguments? Default argument. Function with the default arguments. It means these arguments are given at the time of defining the function. These arguments are given values at the time of defining function. If I don't give the value for this argument, what is the default value of this argument? Space. If I don't give the value for this argument, what is the default value for this argument? Backslash N. If I don't give the value for this argument, what is the default argument? Sys dot std out. If I don't give the value for this argument, what is the default value of this argument? True. Ring on. It means if I'm not giving the value for these arguments, then it will take the default. Default means at the time of writing the function itself, these arguments are given some values. Okay. So default arguments. So default arguments given values. Okay. So function with the default arguments. Function with the default arguments are what here? Optional arguments. Or you can say function is having, or you can say default arguments. Default arguments are given values at the time of function definition. Default arguments are given values at the time of function definition. At the time of calling or invoking, at the time of calling or invoking function, these arguments, these arguments not required. These arguments not required to give values. Not required to give values. If you don't give the values, then it takes which values here? Default values. Now here, why this one? Because, okay, why this one is, now sometimes what will happen is, in application development, yes, example is now, if you take this one, what is the syntax of writing function with the default arguments? You are writing the keyword def and it followed by what name here? Function name. Okay, def function name. Okay, definition syntax is, what is the syntax of this? Is def function name. So first you have to write required arguments. Okay, the order is like this. First, you have to write the required arguments and then you have to write which arguments? Default arguments. So required arguments. After required arguments, you have to write which arguments? Default arguments. So there is an argument 1, argument 2, argument 3. Argument 3 is given value. So argument 4 is given value. Now this is which arguments here? Default arguments. So there is a statement 1 and one more is what? Statement 2. Suppose if you see the example of print itself. If you see this print function, this print function is with default arguments or without default arguments. So separator is given one default value, end is given one default value, and file is given one default value, and flush is given, separator is given one default value, end given one default value, and file is given one default value, and flush is given what? A default value. So default values. Okay, it is given some. Yes. For example, yes, why or when you go for this default arguments is, now in application development, first try to understand what is a default is. But when you go for default, I'll tell you. Now there is a definition, function 1 is there. So where I've given the value of A is, okay, the value of A is none. And the value of B is also what here? None. So it means this function is having how many arguments here? 2 arguments. One is A and one more is what? B. But if you don't give the values to this A and B, what is the default values? None. What is the default values it takes? None. I just print the value of A and B. So I can call this function. See, I'm writing all my executable statements inside what here? Main. I'm writing all my executable statements inside which function? Main function. Then I'm calling the function 1. Okay. But I call the function 1. This is calling the function 1 or invoking calling the function 1 or invoking the function 1. So here I just call the function 1, but I call this function 1. But are you send any values to this function 1? No. Are you send any values to this function 1? No, you have not sent any values to what? Function 1. But function 1 is having how many arguments here? 2 arguments. One is A and one more is what? B. But function 1 is having how many arguments? 2 arguments. One is A and one more is what? B. Then what will happen? If I don't give the value, then what is the default value of A? None. If I don't give the value for B, what is the default value of B? None. So if you print, if I call this main function, so this is executable statement. So once you run this, now you can see the value of A is a none and the value of B is also what here? None. Then I can call this function 1. I can call this function 1 by giving one value. If I'm giving one value, now this is nothing but the value of which one here? A. So then what is the value of A here? 10. Okay, what is the value of A here? 10, right? Then what is the value of B here? None. Because here I've given the value of A, but I've not given the value of which one? B. I've given the value of A, but I've not given the value of which one? B. I've given the value of A, but I've not given the value of B. I said here function 1 comma 40 comma 50. So in this case, I've given the value for A and I've given the value for what? B. So how many ways I call this function? I call this function without sending values. I call this function by sending only one value. I call this function by sending how many values? 2 values. And even I can call this function by giving only which value here? B value. So this is giving value for B, but without giving value for which one? A. So it means this function I'm calling in different ways, right? I call this function without giving value for A and B. I call this function by giving value for A. I call this function by giving value to A as well as what? B. I call this function by giving value for B, but not given value for what? A. So first time when you call it, what is A, B values? None. Second time when you call it, what is A value? 10 and B value is a none. Third time when you call it, A value is a 40 and B value is what? 50. And fourth time when you call it, A value is a none, A value is a none and B value is what? 60. A value is none, but what is the value of B? 60. Now none and this is 10 and none and 40 and 50 and this value is none and this value is what? 60. So it means you are trying to write. Okay, what you are trying to do? You are trying to call the function in different ways by making certain arguments as what here? Default. By making certain arguments as a default. Okay, so here the output, if you see it, so in application development, suppose one function you want to perform, one function should perform multiple operations. If you want one function should perform multiple operations, you want one function should perform what? Multiple operations, then how one function can perform multiple operations? Then what you are doing is you are trying to take the help of default. For example, if you see the simple example of this function draw line is so I want to draw the line. Draw line required the input as a character. But if I don't give the character, then it takes a default character as what? Star. If I don't give the length, then it will take the default length as a some 40. So here line, you're trying to draw the line. You're trying to draw the line. Draw line is a function which draw the line. But if I don't give the any inputs, then by default it takes a character as what? Star and with the length of what? 40. Default character is a star and with the length of 40. Okay, range of length. Range of length and I'm trying to print what? Character. So I'm repeating this character and then I insert one new line. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to call the function draw line, but I call this function. Are you sending any values to this function? No. If you don't send any values to this function, this draw line function draw the line using which character? Star. Okay, what is the default value of this character? Star. What is the default value of length here? 40. What is the default character here? Star. And what is the default length here? 40. Default character is a star and default length is a 40. Correct or not? So it means this is, okay, writing a function with which arguments? Default. So are you given an input to this particular function? No. Then it's taking the value of character as star, it's taking the value of length as what? 40. Now is it line is drawn or not? Yes. In the same way, I'm trying to say draw line. Draw line. Okay, this time I'm trying to give the character. This time I'm trying to give the character. What is the character I've given here? Hash. What is the character I've given here? Hash. Now what is the value of character here? Hash. And what is the length is given? 40. But are you given value for length? No. Given only value for which one? Character. So it will draw the line by using hash. But with the length of which one here? 40. Then I'm trying to say draw line. It means one function can perform multiple operations. So here I try to give the length as a 20. Then I call the function draw line. I call the function draw line by giving the value of length, but not given which one? Character. Then what is the value of character here? Star. What is the length value? 20. Okay, in this case, draw it. Now I can give both the values. I can say draw line. I can give the value of character. Now I want to draw with the character called some hyphen. Okay, I want to repeat this hyphen some 50 times. Then what is the value of character here? Hyphen. And what is the value of length here? 50. It means it will try to repeat this hyphen how many times here? 50 times. Okay, it means one function is having how many operations? Multiple operations. Multiple. Suppose if this default is not there, then I have to write how many functions? Three functions. One is draw line without arguments, draw line with one argument, draw line with what? True arguments. If this default is not there, I have to write how many functions? Three functions. Draw line one, draw line two, draw line three. So draw line one is without arguments, draw line one, two with one argument, and draw line two is with two arguments. But operation of all these functions will be the same. When more than one function performs same operation, but certain things are what? Default. Then you go for function with which arguments? Default arguments. For example, function with the default arguments. Okay, suppose for example, in application development, what will happen is, for example, there is a function called sort. Okay, assume that I'm writing one function called sort. Now sort is a function which will sort the elements of the list. Okay, now this sort function will sort by default in which order? Ascending order. But if I want in descending order, this function is having logic of which order? Ascending order. But if I want in descending order, then I have to write another function. Okay, but operation of this both the functions are what? Same. Okay, sort D. Sort D is a function which will sort in which order? Descending order. Sort is a function which sort in ascending order. Sort D is a function which sort in which order? Descending order. It means as a developer, you have to remember how many functions here? Two functions. But instead of that, I want to add same logic inside what? Same function. Okay, it means this function is having ascending logic as well as what? Descending logic. Okay, this function is having ascending logic as well as what? Descending logic. Suppose if it is order is ascending, then it should execute which logic? Ascending logic. If order is a descending, then it should execute which logic? Descending logic. Now instead of writing two functions, what will I do is I'll write only one function. I write only one function saying sort and A, and here I'll define the order. Order, you'll be defining the order, right? Now what is a default order? What is a default order here? Ascending. Okay, it means if now you'll try to verify if order double equal to which order? Ascending order. If order double equal to ascending order, if order double equal to which order? Ascending order, then execute logic of which one? Execute the logic of which one here? Ascending. Otherwise, execute the logic of which one? Descending. Otherwise, execute the logic of which one here? Descending. Execute the logic of which one here? Descending. But are you right? Two functions are only one function, only one function, but one is default. Which one is a default? Order is what here? Default. Which one is a default? Order is a default. For example, how can you write this? So how can you write this? Now there is a function called sort. So this sort will receive the list. And here I'm saying order. Order equal to which one here? Ascending. So what is the default order here? Ascending. Okay, if I don't give any value, the default order will be which order? Ascending order. If order equal to which one? Ascending. If order equal to ascending, then I have to write the logic for sorting in which order? Ascending order. How you are writing it for I in bubble sorting? I in length of which one here? A. And for J in bubble sorting, what do you do it? You compare adjacent elements. You compare the first element with what? Second element. And second element with what? Third element. Third element with what? Fourth element. You'll try to compare adjacent elements. Okay, length of A minus 1. Length of A minus 1. And you are trying to say if A of J is greater than A of J plus 1. A of J is greater than A of J plus 1. Then you are saying A of J comma A of J plus 1 equal to A of J plus 1 comma A of J. This logic is for which order here? Ascending order. It means if the first element is greater than second element, you are interchanging it. Then you compare the second element with what? Third element. If it is greater than, you are interchanging it. You are comparing third element with what? Fourth element. Then you are interchanging it. If it is greater than, you will interchange it. Okay, if it is not greater than, don't interchange it. Else, okay, else if order is which order here? Descending order. Okay, else if order is which order here? Descending order. Order is a descending order. Okay, descending order. Order is else if. So else if order is descending order, logic is the same, but you'll try to interchange if it is less than. Logic is the same, but you'll try to interchange if it is less than. So length of A minus 1, length of A minus 1, if A of J is greater less than, if A of J is less than A of J plus 1, if A of J is less than A of J plus 1, then you are saying A of J comma A of J plus 1 equal to A of J plus 1 comma, what is that here? A of J. A of J plus 1 comma A of J. Now this is for ascending and this is for what? Descending. Now greater than, if first value is greater than second, then interchange. Here if first value is less than second, then interchange. So assume that there is one list. So I've taken list 1 with some values. Some random values are there in the list. Okay, some random values are there in the list. Okay, like this. Now these are the values in the list. And whenever you call the function by sending object, so I said in Python, there is no pass by value. In Python, there is no pass by value. In Python, there is only pass by reference. In Python, there is no pass by value. In Python, there is only pass by reference. In Python, there is no pass by value. In Python, there is only pass by reference. No pass by value. There is only pass by reference. So there is no pass by value in this. Now, whenever you call the function by sending object, whenever you call the function by sending object, will it send the list to the sort function? No, it will not send the list to the sort function. It will send the address of the list. It will not send the list to the sort function. It will send what? Address of the list. It will not send the list. It will send the address of the list. Now this is a list one. So this list one is created in main function. This list one is created in which function here? Main function. And this list one is holding the address of list. This list one is holding the address of which one here? List. Okay, assume that address of this particular list is some 1000. List one is holding address called which one? 1000. List one is holding the address called which one here? 1000, right? So then when you say sort list one, when you say sort list one, what will happen when you say sort list one? It will call the function sort by sending what here? List one. List one means what it is send here. This is A. A is the argument, and this argument hold the address of which one here? List. Okay, it means are you pass the list to this sort function or address of list? Address of list. So in Python, there is no pass by values. In Python, there is no pass by values. In Python, everything is passed by address only. So whenever you send the object to the function, it doesn't send the object, but it send what? Address of the object. In this case, A and list one, in this case, A and list one, both are referring to the same list or different list, same list. In this case, A and list one, is it this both are listed? This both are refers to the same list or different list, same list. You are trying to say if order is which order here? Ascending order. So are you define any order here? No. Then what is the default order? It is ascending order. Then it will take I is length of A. So J in length of A minus 1. Suppose this length is 10. 10 minus 1 is what here? 9. 10 minus 1 is what here? 9. Assume that 9. Then it will compare A of 0 with what? A of 1. What is A of 0 here? 4. And what is A of 1 here? 8. Is it A of 0 is greater than A of 1? No. Then next it will compare A of 1 with what here? A of 2. Is it 8 is greater than 2? Yes. Then this both will be interchanged. This both will be what? Interchange. So you are trying to compare which elements here? Adjacent elements. In the list I said, the sorting logic I said in the list. I think if you remember, just refer it. Okay. Yes. So after sorting, I'm trying to display the list one. And before sorting, I'm trying to display list one. But this sorting is in which order? Ascending order or descending? Ascending. Now you can see 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this sorting is ascending order or descending? Ascending. Then you can sort in descending by saying sort. Again, I want to sort the same list, but this time I'll try to send the order. What is the order I'm sending? Descending. And then I try to print list one. Then in this case, it will try to sort the elements of the list. In which order here? Descending order. Now here it is sorted in which order? Ascending order. Here it is sorted in which order? Descending order. This is in ascending order and this is in what? Descending order. But one function is having how many logics here? Two logics. But based on this argument, but what is the default logic you are executing? Ascending. What is the default logic you are executing? Ascending. If you give the value of descending, then it execute which logic? Descending logic. So this is one situation where you can use a function with which arguments? Default arguments or optional arguments. You'll say default arguments are optional arguments. Okay. You can call it as default or the same thing. You are saying it as optional arguments. Now, sometimes, for example, suppose if you see another example of this, okay, how this default argument says. Now, there could be another situation when you can go for default arguments. Okay, there could be another situation when you can go for which arguments? Default arguments. So there could be another situation where you can go for default arguments, default arguments. So another situation where you can go for which one? Default arguments. Okay. So what is that is, for example, there is one function called some simple interest. Yeah, there is simple function called simple interest. Now, simple interest is a function which receives the amount. Amount is required. To find the simple interest, which one is required? Amount is required. To find the simple interest, what is required is amount is required. To find the simple interest, what you required is a amount is required. What is required is a amount is required. Okay, what is required is amount is required. And which one is required? Time is required. So here amount is which argument? Required argument. And time is also what? Required argument. And there is one argument which is default. If I don't give the rate of interest, it takes the default rate of interest as some 1 point. It takes the default rate of interest as 1.5. So what is the default value? It takes here 1.5. So it means, for example, this function will work in how many ways? 2 ways. Okay, now I can find the simple interest with rate and without sending rate. If I don't give the rate, then what is the default rate it takes? 1.5. If I don't give the rate, what is the default rate it takes? 1.5. If I give the rate, if I want to give the rate, I can give the rate value. If I want to give the rate, I can give the rate value. Now I'm saying S equal to some amount into time into rate divided by what? 100, and this function returns a value. So this function receive the value and it also return the value. It receive the value and it also returns what here? Value. It receive how many values here? 3 values. It receive the value and it also return the value. It receive how many values here? 3 values, right? So here I'm trying to write simple interest 1, because the function return value, right? Then I'm saying simple interest. I call this function by sending amount and I send the time. It means how many values I've given input here? 2 values. So this amount is required argument and time is a required argument, but rate is what? Default. So I've given the value for amount. So here I've given the value for amount. I've given the value for which one? Time. But are you given value of rate? No. Given the value of amount, given the value of time, not given the value of which one? Rate. Then what is the default rate? 1.5. Not given the value for rate, then what is the default rate? 1.5. Okay, now. So in the same way, I'm trying to write simple interest to equal to simple interest. I want to find the simple interest for 9,000 and the time is some 24 and I try to give the rate here some 1.8. This time what is the value of amount? 9,000. What is the value of time? 24. What is the value of rate? 1.8. Because are you given value or not? Yes. If you don't give the value, then it takes which value? Default value. But if you give value, will it take that value or not? Yes. If you don't give the value, then it takes the default value. But if you give input to that default value, it takes which value? The value which is given. So what is the value given to this rate? 1.8. Then I'm trying to print format. What is this here? Simple interest. Okay, I just print some SA1 and print format and trying to say here simple interest. This is what is this here? Simple interest 2. So I try to print how many values here? 2 values. Now this is 900 and this is some value. Suppose if default arguments are not there, then I have to write how many functions? 2 functions. One is function with how many arguments? 2 arguments. The other function is with how many arguments? 3 arguments. Okay. One is a function with default rate. One is a function with input rate. Okay. How many functions I have to write? 2 functions. One is a function with default and one is a function with input rate. Instead of writing 2 functions, here we write how many functions here? 1 function. Instead of writing 2 functions, you are trying to write. You write how many functions? 1 function only. Okay. See here, if default is not there, what will happen? If default is not there, so here, this is definition simple interest. Simple interest 1. So what is the name of this function? Simple interest 1 with the amount and time. So here I'll say simple interest equal to amount into time into 1.5. Amount into time into 1.5 divided by 100. So return simple interest. If default is not there, I have to write one function like this. What is the name of the function? Simple interest 1. So this function I'm giving how many values? 2 values. But rate is taken automatically or not? Yes. Then I have to write one more function saying simple interest. Okay, simple interest 2. I write another function simple interest 2. There is a simple interest 2 with the amount of time. And then one more is what? Rate. Then here I'm writing simple interest 2 where I'm saying amount into time into rate divided by what? 100. And then I'm trying to return simple interest. So how many functions I've written here? 2. If I want to find the simple interest with this default rate, then I'll call the first function. If I want to find the simple interest by giving rate, I call which function? Second function. So instead of writing 2 functions here, okay, you are trying to write these 2 functions in what? One function only. Instead of writing 2 functions here, you are trying to write these 2 functions in what? One function only. What is the name of this function? Simple interest. Receive the amount of time, and this is given inside a function or not? Yes. Then instead of that, you'll say rate equal to which one? 1.5. It means these 2 functions functionality, is done by how many functions here? Only one function. This 2 functions functionality is done by how many functions here? Only one function. 2 functions functional. Now I can call this function in how many ways? 2 ways, right? I can call this function in how many ways here? 2 ways. One is giving how many values? 2 values. One is giving how many values? 3 values. Now this avoids you to write. This will avoid to write number of functions. You don't require to write number of functions. Okay, you don't require to write what? Number of functions. You don't require to write number of functions. Okay, you don't require to write a number of functions. Okay, then there is some rule for writing this function with the default arguments. Okay, now always you have to write a function with the default arguments. If the function is having required arguments and default arguments, first you have to write. If function is having required arguments and default arguments, first you have to write required arguments and then you have to write default arguments. If function is having default arguments and required arguments, first you have to write required arguments and then you have to write what? Default arguments. First is required arguments. Now suppose I'm writing a function 1 with a equal to 10 and b. What is the first one? Default. What is the second one? Required. So immediately it gives what? Immediately it is given what? Error. You can see red underline there. Red underline is there. Okay. I call the function 1 by sending 100 comma 200. So what will happen if I run this? Okay, if I run this, it will try to generate what? Error. So what is the error it is given? Non-default argument follows which argument? Default argument. Non-default argument follows which argument here? Default argument. Okay, non-default argument follows default argument means, okay, is it B? B is a required or not? Yes. So non-default, which one is a non-default here? B. And which one is a default here? A. So what is the syntax error? Non-default argument follows what? Default. Means you have to give first which argument? Non-default. Then next you have to give which argument? Default. First you have to give non-default. Non-default means you have to give which one? Required argument, and then you have to give what? Default argument. But here it is given in reverse. Then it gives what? Error. It gives what here? Error. And what is that error here? Syntax error. Okay. So the output is what here? Error, you'll get it. And what is that error is? Syntax. What is that error is? Syntax error. Okay, this is a syntax error you'll get. So because non-default argument follows which one? Default. Or so you have to write first non-default and then default arguments. Okay. Yes. There is one more type of arguments you can write it. A function can have another type of arguments. A function can have another type of arguments, and that is called as variable length arguments. So there is one more category of this arguments here. What is it? Is variable length arguments. Variable length. Variable length arguments are the same thing. You call it as arbitrary arguments. You call it as variable length arguments. The same thing you'll say it as a arbitrary arguments. So variable length arguments are the same thing. You call it as okay, variable length arguments. Okay, you can also call this as which arguments? Arbitrary arguments. So what is this variable length argument is? So generally a argument receive only one value. So generally a argument receives how many values here? One value. For example, if I'm writing a function 1, suppose there is function 1, or assume that there is a function called, okay, assume that there is one function called which one here? Add. So what is the name of the function here? Add. Add is a function, and this function is having how many arguments here? 2 arguments. So what is the name of the function here? Add. And this function is having how many arguments? 2 arguments. So it means this function can add how many values here? Only 2 values. I'll say a plus b and print which value here? C value. Okay, this function receive how many values? Only 2 values. And add 2 numbers. Suppose I want to add three numbers. Is it this function will work or doesn't work? Doesn't work. Okay, I want to add three numbers. Is it this function work or doesn't work? Doesn't work because this function can add how many values? Only two values. Then I have to write another function or not? Yes. I have to write another function called add2, and this add2 function receive how many values? Three values. And then it will add it a plus b plus c, and then I'll say print which one here? D. So add1 is a function which is used for adding two values, and add2 is a function which is for adding three values. This will work for two values and this will work for what? Three values. But now my requirement is I want to add how many values? Four values. Then what I have to do? I have to write another function. I have to write another function with how many arguments? Four arguments. Okay, now this function will receive how many values here? Four values. A plus B plus, what is that? C plus A plus B plus C plus D. And I try to print which value? E value. So this add1 function will add two values, and add2 function will add three values. Add3 function will add what? Four values. Suppose if I want to add five values, then again you'll write one more function or not? Yes. But when you see all these functions, only one thing is changing. Operation of all these functions are what here? Same. Operation of all these functions are what? Same. But which one is changing? Operation of all these functions are what? Same. But which one is changing? Arguments. This will receive two values. This will receive three values. This will receive four values. But what is the operation of all these functions? Adding only. Operation of all these functions is what? Adding only, but one receiving two values, one receiving three values, and one receiving what? Four values. Now, instead of writing number of functions with different number of arguments, instead of writing number of functions with different number of arguments, you'll write only one function, because two argument function receive two values, three argument function receive three values, four argument function receive four values. But I want to write a function with only one argument that can receive any number of values. I want to write a function with only one argument and that can receive what? Any number of values. I want to write a function with only one argument and that can receive any number of values. I'll say star. Now star value or star value or star A. Star A. I just write here which one? Star A. Star A is there. It means this is which type of argument? Variable length argument. So this argument can receive how many values? Any number of values. I can call this function by sending two values. I can call this function by sending three values. I can call this function by sending what? Any number of values, but having how many arguments here? Only one. So one function, one argument can, one function work like two arguments, three arguments, as well as what? Four arguments or n arguments. So I don't require to write number of functions, but rather than you are trying to write only one, rather than writing number of functions, you are writing only one function. Rather than writing number of functions, you are writing only what? One function to perform all these operations. Okay. So function with variable length argument. So function with variable length argument receive. Function with variable length argument receive zero or more values. Okay, function with variable length argument receive how many values? Zero or more values. Function with variable length arguments receive zero or more values. Receives zero or more values. Function with variable length argument receives zero or more values. Okay, now, yes. So now the variable length argument is prefixed with variable length So variable length argument is prefix with what here? Star. Variable length argument is prefix with what here? Star. Variable length argument is prefix with star. Okay. It is an argument which is prefixed with what here? Star. Variable length argument is prefixed with star. Correct or not? It is prefixed with the star. So variable length argument is a type of variable length argument is a type of it is a type of which one? Tuple. Variable length argument is of type which one? Tuple. Is it tuple contain one value or more than one value? More than one value. So variable length argument is of type tuple which hold zero or more values. Zero or more values. Okay. Now a function can have only one variable length argument. You cannot write a function with multiple variable length arguments. You cannot write a function with multiple variable length arguments. You can write a function with only one variable length argument, but not multiple variable length arguments. If you are trying to write multiple variable length arguments, it will generate what? Error. It will generate what here? Error, right? Okay, so the syntax of writing variable length argument. This is a syntax of writing a variable length argument. So you are writing like this definition, and there is a function name. And then first you have to write required arguments. So this is order. First you have to give required argument, and then you have to give which argument? Variable length argument. First you have to give required argument and then variable length argument. If you are writing with multiple types, then next you have to give which argument? Default argument by giving value. So this is the order in which you have to write the function with the different types of arguments. This is the order in which you have to write the function with the different types of arguments. This is one order in which you have to write a function with the different types of arguments. Okay. Yes. So, right. So there is no. Okay, right now there is a function name and required arguments, variable length arguments, and one more arguments is what your default arguments. Okay, so we can write with different types of arguments here, right? So the function name and required arguments, variable length arguments, and one more is which one here? Default arguments. Okay. So this is the order, but you can have multiple required arguments. but you can have multiple default arguments, but you can have only one variable length argument. For example, I write a function here. So there is a function 1 with star A. Star A is there and print A. So here I can call this function by sending or without sending any values. If I'm calling this function without sending any values, this is called which tuple? Empty tuple. Are you send any values to A here? No. It means A is a tuple or not? Yes. So is it A is having any values in this case? No. Then A is which tuple here? Empty tuple. Then I'm trying to say function 1 by sending how many values here? 1 value. Then this function 1 is having how many values? 1 value. Then I'm calling the function 1. I'm calling the function 1 by sending how many values here? 2 values. So is it function receive 2 values or not? Yes. But function is having how many arguments? Only 1. But I'm sending how many values? Any number of values. I can call the function by sending any number of values. Okay, I try to send how many values to the function? 10 values, but function is having how many arguments? Only 1. Function is having how many arguments? Only 1, but receive how many values? N number of values. So if function required to receive n number of values and perform same operation, then go for function with what? Variable length arguments. If you want, you can print A is which type? Okay. A is which type here? Tuple type. A is which type here? A is which type here? Tuple type. A is which type here? A is a tuple type. Tuple. It is a tuple, right? A is which type here? Tuple type, right? So this is how you are trying to write it. Okay. So like print function is there. Print, just now I said print function. If you see the print function first argument is what? Print function receive one value or more than one value? More than one value. So what is the first argument of the print? Variable length. What is the first argument of print? Variable length. What is the second argument of print? Default. Okay, what is the third argument of print? Default. But what is the first argument of print? Variable. Because can you send it print or not? Yes. Okay, but if I'm sending 100 values, is it all 100 values are stored in one argument or not? Yes. And what is that argument here? Value. Is it all 100 values are stored in one argument or not? Yes. What is that argument here? Value. Ring or not? So that is how you are writing a function with a multiple. That is how you are writing a function with variable length argument, right? Okay, we'll try to see more on this, like how you work with variable length arguments and other type of arguments, but Monday we'll see that. Okay, so today we'll stop it here and Monday we'll continue this, right? Thank you.